Now, what I want to talk about is Thomas Jefferson's note. It was a private mail that he sent to one of his friends, I believe, about separation of church and state. Now, a lot of people have interpreted this to mean a separation of religion from the state. And while that probably is a good idea not to base laws off religious doctrine, obviously, I don't think that's what he meant, and there is no law that says neither one of those things, which might explain a lot of the problems today. But separation of church and state to me means separation from the hegemony the church represents. The church is an institution. It's not particularly any religious belief. It is the all-encompassing monopoly on religious belief. So when you say separation of church and state, what you mean to say is separation from that one institution controlling the state's, laws. So separation from the Vatican, separation from corporations, separation from anything that would, control the very foundation of our lawmaking process and force it to bend to the whims of that one institution. This is why our forefathers did not want there to be political parties, because political parties grow into these massive institutions and create cultural hegemony. That's why they were so worried about parties, but yet they developed anyway. And in fact, George Washington said himself he would have liked there to be a one-party state. Now, why would he say that? Because under one party, there would actually be more ideologies conflicting than under the multiple party system, because under a multiple party system you feel more inclined to be devoted to your party because God forbid the other party should win, as opposed to a one party state where you can actually talk about the issues and disagree with them without this need to be devoted to your label. So that's the flaw in democracy. The flaw in democracy is the fact that we all have this oath we keep to our parties that we somehow are befitting to their vague ideology, and we're not allowed to deviate from that, as opposed to actually talking about these issues as human beings. That's what I believe separation of church and state entails. The separation from the fact that we have a responsibility to uphold these true Scotsman mentalities, as opposed to just talking about the issues. Now, there's nothing wrong with parties in and of themselves. You want to find like-minded people and group yourself together, organized, to get shit done. That's perfectly reasonable, that's understandable, that's good. But it isn't good to try to control the mindset, control the very thought process by creating this one institution that predates all others, that just basically steps down on anyone that will alienate themselves from that set ideology that you have proposed. And that to me, that to me is what separation of church and state means. So if you disagree with that, you can post in the comments section. But essentially, I don't think our forefathers or any of us here and now should have a problem with religious people getting into the political process and using their religion as a scapegoat for their politics, so much as we should worry about those institutions as churches, as houses, as, big empirical beings stepping down on the entire thought process of the democratic process. There's nothing wrong with people having religious beliefs, but there is a problem with religious beliefs combining to form a corporation that in turn forces everyone else to play along with those religious beliefs. But I personally don't think that religion has any place on the debate field. Every time I see these science shows about 2012 and shit, it kind of annoys me that so-called scientists are relying on hieroglyphics and shit to study what will happen. You don't base your beliefs, especially in the field of science, on what you found on a rock 20,000 years ago. You base it off facts that we've studied, that we've done research on, that we've done through trial and error, that we've tested. That's how you decide the geological origins, our origins as a species, philosophy, things like that. You have to think about it. You can't just go by something that was said a long time ago, or clues of what a past civilization might have been like. That's how you get those kinds of problems. Because very easily, that can twist into this romantic, sensationalized religion, and that's how the Nazis started. I hate to invoke Godwin's law here, but it's very easy to fall right back into that. You know, as much as people want to believe that the Nazis could never happen again, they could. In fact, in some ways they still do, in most every country. The Nazis are not special just because they were proud of the fact they were genocidal, just because they were proud of the fact that they were authoritarian. Those just made them more blatant about it, more obnoxious. And guess what? People back then, they didn't care. They loved it. And you still love it today. You still love the authoritarianism. You still love the genocide. We just call it something different now. And the fact that it's not one hegemony political party like the Nazi Party was, but rather a multitude of corporations screwing over the little guy, screwing over the third world, screwing themselves over in the long run by destroying the planet. So that's what I'm trying to get across here, is the fact that we should not be worried about religious people wanting to ban abortion or somehow regulate birth control to death because that's their religious beliefs. They're wrong. They're wrong politically, and they're wrong metaphorically because of the fact they're basing this off their religious text as opposed to the facts they've come to their own conclusions through living life and through talking to people and through coming to some kind of, objective conclusion by thinking about it. But I would not say that they are not entitled to being part of the process as anybody else. But when they form those gigantic institutions that then control the mindset, and then we have to all pretend that we're all religious, yeah, then we have a problem. We have a problem with the fact that our politicians have to pretend that they're good, wholesome Christians that go to church every Sunday when most of them aren't, and even if they did, it wouldn't mean anything. It wouldn't change their characters, it wouldn't change their political views, it wouldn't change society at large. It's just bullshit. And it's bullshit we have to pretend to be part of just because. Just because that's what our society has grown into. Is this hegemony of, even though most of us are not particularly religious, we have to pretend to be religious. Because if we aren't religious, then somehow we're going to alienate other people that aren't religious either, but are also pretending to be religious. And it's one sick game that none of us need to be playing. So, we've completely went against what our forefathers had dreamed for this country, and I'm not saying that the American forefathers were perfect, by any means, no. They were terrible people. They slaughtered the Indians, they enslaved Africans, they didn't give a fuck about the poor, but they understood these problems, and for their own sake, for the sake of their own power, they knew better. But people now don't know better, and that's why the 1% has completely controlled all of politics and religion alike. So, you go ahead and think about that. I guess that's it.